construction, coal industry, transport, engineering, and the automotive industry, 4 sectors of the Russian economy at risk, reported to Putin by Deputy Prime Minister of Russia Alexander Novak. These sectors are at risk due to their solvency indicators or the need for credit restructuring, Novak explained. The real reason for these problems is not disclosed by the Kremlin. Publicly, neither Putin nor his officials admit to the dire state of the economy, though it has become impossible to ignore the catastrophic trends.
President Vladimir Putin has grown increasingly concerned about distortions in Russia's wartime economy, but domestic activity has become strained in recent months by labor shortages and high interest rates introduced to tackle inflation, which has accelerated under record military spending. That has contributed to the view within a section of the Russian elite that a negotiated settlement to the war is desirable, according to 2 of the sources familiar with thinking in the Kremlin, from a Reuters publication.
Record military spending has driven inflation. The response, higher interest rates, have led to Russian business being unable to service their credit debt. According to estimates from Russia's Center of Macroeconomic Analysis and Short-Term Forecasting, 1 in 5 industrial enterprises in Russia is at risk. This means we can expect a significant number of corporate bankruptcies in the near future. Experts predict that 2025 will be a year of tightening belts for the Russian economy. The International Monetary Fund forecasts that economic growth in Russia will slow by nearly 3 times to just 1.5%.
Costs are high. There is an increase in all resources that are consumed. Not everything has manifested yet. This year, we will most likely see a sharp rise in railway tariffs, as well as a sharp increase in road transport tariffs. There is also a big crisis in road transportation, which will affect the final product prices in supermarkets. On the industrial market, costs are increasing.
Russia's response to any crisis: repression. Putin has ordered the police to, quote, ensure economic security and cleanse the country of corruption. In Russia, anyone deemed connected to the West or insufficiently loyal to the regime can be blamed for economic issues. Over the first 10 months of 2024, Russia opened 18,000 corruption cases. In some cases, this led to the nationalization of private businesses.
For instance, corrupt origins became the grounds for the nationalization of Russia's largest pasta producer, Makfa. According to the Moscow Times, 29 companies were nationalized for violating anti-corruption laws, from the Moscow Times publication.
Price increases, inflation, and a shortage of workers. Moscow continues to deny the negative impact of sanctions on the economy, but the effect is clear, as are the results of record financial and human resource expenditures to continue Russia's war against Ukraine.
In Russia, inflation is multifaceted. The central bank tries to make it seem like everything is only about the insane influx of money. This is not true. It's convenient for them to explain that a lot of money is being pumped into the budget. They now try to claim that the Ministry of Finance is spending less money, which is very laughable. If the Ministry of Finance had its way, it would spend less money. But the military demands, give us money. So what can the Ministry of Finance do?
In 2025, the Russian economy will become even more dependent on the military-industrial complex, according to British intelligence. This is due to inflationary pressure and corporate defaults in civilian industries. In 2025, inflation in Russia will exceed the central bank's target of 4%. If interest rates remain high, businesses' pressure will grow. For ordinary Russians, this means further price increases on consumer goods are inevitable. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Victoria Smirnova, UATV News.
The Kremlin understands that the war against Ukraine is also devastating for Russia, but the Russian army still has the potential to advance further. This is the assessment of Kirill Budanov, chief of the main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine. According to him, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine is costing the aggressor country an enormous amount. Russia spends approximately $1 billion per day on the war.
Це взагалі дуже дорога війна.
This is an extremely expensive war. A single day of war costs them just under $1 billion, an enormous sum. As for human resources, we must not deceive ourselves. Russia's mobilization potential, according to calculations, allows them to continue advancing. However, the pace and the number of casualties are factors they cannot ignore, and they do take them into account.
The head of Ukrainian intelligence also reminded that according to official data, Russia's defense budget accounts for 41% of the country's main expenditure.
Це ненормальні цифри.
These are abnormal figures. To accommodate this budget, nearly all social programs, including healthcare and education, have been cut. The negative financial and economic impact on the Russian Federation is already noticeable. However, as long as they have oil, gas, metals, and precious stones, they will try to balance the situation.
Pouring most of the budget into the military-industrial complex has already given results. The truth is disappointing. Inflation of 10%, an interest rate of 21%, rising food prices, and falling incomes of citizens. One of Russia's largest dairy producers has already announced it will raise its wholesale prices by up to 15% in March. Prices are not the only thing rising, so is overdue mortgage debt. Russia's total overdue mortgage debt has reached nearly 100 billion rubles. Meanwhile, the total volume of mortgage loans has grown by 7% over the past year, reaching over 19 trillion rubles by early January, according to the central bank.
In 2023, the total mortgage portfolio in Russia increased by 4.2 trillion rubles, compared to 2.1 trillion in 2022. Until July 2024, Russia had a widespread preferential mortgage program for new buildings at an 8% interest rate. The opportunity to buy real estate at minimal rates encouraged many to take out mortgages without fully assessing the financial capabilities. Evgeny Shavnev, CEO of the real estate investment company Flip LLC, cited by the Moscow Times.
Russia's industrial production growth has also slowed, according to the Ministry of Economic Development. In January 2025, industrial output increased by just 2%, half of the average growth rate from the previous year. While the defense sector is ramping up production, civilian industries are struggling. Furniture production fell by 2.4% in January, clothing and footwear output fell by almost 3.5%, and food processing slowed by 2%. At the same time, the central bank continues to report that Russia's GDP grew by more than 4% last year.
Although GDP growth formally remains high, real productive activity in the economy has almost ceased to expand. Almost all of the recorded growth comes from the defense sector. Without it, production levels remain at 2021 levels. Civilian industries have been stagnating since mid-2023, and in the second half of last year, even with the defense boom, the entire industrial sector entered stagnation. From the report of the Center for Macroeconomic Analysis and Short-Term Forecasting.
Nearly a third of Russia's logistic companies are on the verge of bankruptcy. Experts warn that if the government does not provide support, at least 30% of market participants will go bankrupt in 2025. This would lead to a shortage of transportation equipment, a 25% increase in shipping rates, and a rise in consumer prices. According to the IMP, Russia's economic growth is expected to slow nearly threefold from its current level to just 1.5% in 2025. Reported by Katerina Bastun, Yulia Granovska, UATV News.